You know, I find it funny that there's people out there that actually believe that one person can make America great again. Nevertheless, hire a bankster to the Treasury Secretary position, as it says here, to make America rich again in a world that's overly dependent on debt, where in just the last 4 years alone, both Donald Trump and Joe Biden added $12 trillion in just 4 years compared to the other 221 years of our country's existence. And then you factor in that this administration will be the last administration under the Federal Reserve legacy system, where as of right now, we're working with 98% of purchasing power vanished since the creation of the Federal Reserve. And not one time has anyone mentioned plan on how to revamp or eliminate the central banking model altogether. But yet there are rumors that the global economic system is about to shift dramatically, and not too many people is actually paying attention to it. It's a quiet but seismic realignment involving gold, currencies, and international power plays. Let's talk about this. All right, so wanted to take a quick minute, share some thoughts in reference to what I would consider the Great Realignment or the reshuffling of the deck when it comes to some of the economic policies and procedures that are being talked about now in the mainstream media. It has everything to do with Trump's plan for this incoming Treasury Secretary, 𝗙𝗢𝗟𝗟𝗢𝗪, and some rumors floating around as to how he's going to try to prolong the lifespan of the USD, as well as the United States as the global power of the world. So in this video here, we're going to talk about 3 things that's worth paying attention to, and it happens to do with nations moving away from our debt, at the same time, the continuation of the de-dollarization process by the Eastern nations, and how gold possibly factors into all of this. So as always, if you guys want to see more of these little quick takes, hit that thumbs up button, show your support for the channel, and then drop a comment down below with your thoughts or opinions on the subject matter, because I definitely would love to find out more from you guys. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so you're always notified whenever these videos are put out, which I try to do every couple days or so. And as always, just don't want to talk about the problem that our world faces without offering possible strategies and solutions and things that I do myself. And for those who haven't looked into it yet, I'd encourage you to consider joining the Silver team. Here you can see I have my own personal store here that allows me to get into the silver game directly and be able to offer strategies and solutions to people in tangible form via silver and gold products. So if you're interested in finding out more, feel free to click the link in the description or go to mysilverteam.com and set up your own store where you can become your own #1 client and then help family and friends protect and preserve everything they work hard for as well by either shopping for you or setting up their own store as well and joining the community. And then last, for my people who recognize that gold is money and want to purchase the most affordable gold for savings or spending in select locations, we have the 24 karat gold notes here in denominations of a 1 unit all the way to 50 units. And they're pure 24 karat gold notes that allows anybody to be able to take physical possession of gold by redeeming some of these Federal Reserve notes in exchange for bricks of 24 karat gold. So if you're interested in finding out more, go to buygoldnotes.com or just click the link in the description to get yours today. So let's talk about this seismic shift that I'm referring to as I consider it a complete realignment of the current monetary structure. In the next couple of months and years, we're going to hear a lot about gold and silver from the alternative media side. But is there a possibility that the incoming administration may also be talking about gold or utilizing gold as a fallback plan for our country? But whether they do or they don't, every decision that's made in the near future will affect you now and for the future. And this is something worth considering because these changes will influence everything from your savings to the cost of a morning cup of coffee. And there's 3 stories worth touching on that I believe covers the broader macro picture that we need to discuss. And if you think realignment is not going to be a major change to the global monetary order, then think again. Even Trump's pick, the Treasury Secretary, 𝗙𝗢𝗟𝗟𝗢𝗪, sees a global economic reordering, and he wants to be a part of it. Now, the question you have to ask yourself is, why? Clearly, he sees the writing on the wall when it comes to U.S. Treasuries, because as it says here, Japan and China dumped U.S. Treasuries before Trump's victory. And so we all know that Japan is having a currency crisis right now, of which our markets have gone through a little bit of turbulence over the last couple of months because of it. But the Japanese yen is in free fall right now, and it's forcing the government to pour over $100 billion into stabilizing its value. So think of it like trying to plug a leaking dam with duct tape. It's temporary at best, but it ain't gonna stick for long. And it makes imports pricier, squeezing Japanese households and businesses. But it doesn't just stop there, because the ripple effect spread globally. As it says here, Japanese investors sold a record $61.9 billion of securities in the last 3 months ended in September 30th, according to the data from the U.S. Department of Treasury, which they reported just yesterday. And this matters, because Japan has long been one of the largest buyers of U.S. debt. As they retreat and pull back from buying our debt, who steps in to fill that gap? So that means fewer buyers mean higher interest rates. And as we can see here, over the last 3 months, the 10-year Treasury has been slowly but surely ticking up, meaning that's more pressure on Uncle Sam at a time that they need to issue trillions upon trillions of more debt to fund our deficits. And the second thing we're paying attention to is what's happening in China, because their de-dollarization strategy is still underway, even though their currency is having issues because they themselves are going through their own little financial crisis, which is forcing them to print more yuan to try to keep their economy afloat. But then again, as we look at China's Treasury holdings, we can clearly see that something changed from the time frame going back to 2000, where China was a buyer of U.S. debt, to the Great Flipping, or the fuse that started the whole de-dollarization process, which started about right here Once we were well into the whole QE 1, 2, and 3, or legalizing counterfeiting and flooding the world with dollars, that's when China began unwinding a lot of their long-term holdings in U.S. Treasury to the point where now we're seeing seismic dips, which I don't see slowing down anytime soon. Which in the same article about Japan and China both dumping treasuries right before Trump's victory, to put a figure to how much China's dumping, it says funds in China offloaded $51.3 billion during the same period that Japan unloaded debt. It says this is the second biggest sum on record. So imagine a seesaw. On one side, China is pulling in the gold and promoting the yuan, globally speaking. And on the other side, the dollar is losing its balance. So this is the seesaw of the de-dollarization movement that's happening right now. And this isn't just about economics. It's about geopolitical maneuvering, to say the least. By internationalizing the yuan, that's a way to begin insulating themselves from potential sanctions that's definitely going to come under the Trump administration. And so here's an older article that talks about the fact that the yuan status as a global currency is gaining ground, but just slightly. Yet we know the real reason why the yuan is very significant for China's future plans, because it has everything to do with their desire to ramp up the Belt and Road Initiative. That's a part of the reset or the rebuilding of the global structure from the Eastern Hemisphere. So as China continues to position itself as a rival to the dollar-denominated system, as of right now, it can be ignored by the average person, but at some time in the future, for that same person, this could mean higher costs for goods as global trade shifts away from dollar pricing. And it's a slow but steady unraveling of a system that's been the backbone of global commerce for decades now. And then last, how does gold factor into all this? And that's a $1 quadrillion question, because we all know that debt is unsustainable and therefore the currencies are becoming worth less, literally. And so that leaves nation states needing something tangible and real that has no counterparty risk and goes beyond monetary and fiscal malfeasance. So could there be some type of gold play coming to the U.S. where there's a treasury bond issued by the U.S. that's redeemable in gold? Not sure, but some people think so. And this is where things get really interesting, because for some reason, 𝗙𝗢𝗟𝗟𝗢𝗪 has a bold vision. And he's considering issuing ultra long-term bonds. But at the same time, we talk about nations dumping treasuries. Here we have the incoming treasurer talking about issuing long-dated bonds for 50 to 100 years. Not quite sure how that's going to play out. But then again, anything to keep this Ponzi scheme of a debt system going, I'm sure. But to give you an idea what's going on here, it says 𝗙𝗢𝗟𝗟𝗢𝗪's support for a 50-year treasury reflects a focus on locking in low borrowing costs amid expectations of stable or rising interest rates. So ultimately, I doubt seriously that Scott's talking about bringing gold back into the equation. Because once again, we all know that the goal is to move away from gold and silver as monetary mediums of wealth preservation. And so the idea of him wanting to issue longer dated notes lets us know that the goal is to kick the can down the road further by issuing those bonds at a certain interest rate, thinking long term, because the real threat today is surging interest rate as a result of all the debt that's imploding now, and the idea that the market demands higher interest when they know a government doesn't have their house in order and they're going to need a lot more debt to run deficit. So hence the pendulum is swinging right now. Even with the Doge project talking about cutting unnecessary spending, on the other end of that, our entire system runs upon debt. No matter how much you cut over here, you still got to swing back over here to issue more debt, because debt is the name of the game. And so that's why I say no matter who's in office, no one can slow down or stop this clock from continuing to move forward. Because as of right now, we're at 36 trillion. And the moment this clock stops or it reverses, game over. And so between now and then, there's going to be a lot of shenanigans that the Trump administration is going to try to come out with. But ultimately, we know there's no purchasing power left or any true value that will be returned to the people in a debt-based instrument. And so when it comes to gold, it's no coincidence that someone who is considered somewhat of a gold bug, Judy Shelton, is the one to put out the idea of a 50-year bond note convertible into gold. She hinted at the idea last week on one of the mainstream news shows and then tweeted out this tweet here says that a proposal for a 50-year treasury bond convertible into gold issued at the initiative of President Trump on July 4th, 2026. And while that sounds good, I wouldn't hold my breath and actually thinking that's going to come to fruition. Because as I said before, and I will continue to repeat it over and over again, they don't want to go backwards to gold. They want to go forward to digital distractions. But then again, it's something worth paying attention to. But that's why I continue to remind you guys that despite all the digital distractions, make sure you stay secured in things that are tangible and then speculate in the ones and zeros on screens. Because while the world is excited about digits, the global gold demand has surged, hitting a record 1,300 tons in Q3 this year. At the same time, all those treasuries were dumped. And so that's a 5% increase year over year. And so with the BRICS nations, including China and Russia, stockpiling gold, they're clearly signaling pivot towards hard assets. So once again, the global financial order is evolving in ways that could redefine how wealth is stored and value is transferred. So whether it's Japan's desperate interventions or China's strategic shifts or the U.S. political long-dated debt instruments that they're talking about floating out there, these moves are reshaping and realigning the foundations of the global economy. And so ignoring these changes is like ignoring storm clouds that's on the horizon. You might not get wet immediately, but you better make sure you grab your umbrella because rain is coming. So once again, just sharing with you some things worth paying attention to outside of all the distractions that the world would love to keep our attention focused on. But as always, curious to hear what you guys think. If you found value, hit that thumbs up button. Drop a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on this subject matter. And as always, if you found value, take this and share it so other people can find out an alternative spin to what's really happening. And other than that, I'll catch you guys later. Peace.